Some folks say fear is your friend, that it protects you, keeps you safe, keeps you small, like a spiritual seatbelt. But here's the truth, my dear wrinkled warriors. Fear isn't your friend. It's the nosy neighbor of your soul, always peeking through the blinds, never minding its own damn business. And we've all let it in, made tea for it, let it redecorate our lives in shades of what if and maybe later. But not today, because today we politely kick fear out, with laughter, with truth, and with a touch of Buddhist irreverence. Welcome, my lovely late bloomers, to Buddhist Wisdom for the Elderly, where we talk about fear, love, death, purpose, and toenail polish, sometimes all in the same sentence. This video breaks fear down part by part. Each section gives you a fear phrase you've probably believed for years, why it hurts more than it helps, a true story of someone just like you who survived it, and a Buddhist alternative that doesn't suck the joy out of life. If you only watch one section, make it part 8. What if you're not afraid, just bored of being yourself? Because that part might just remind you who you were before fear got all dressed up as maturity. Like, subscribe, help us reach 1,000 kindred spirits. We're building a refuge for the fearless and the tired. Now take a breath. Let's begin. Part 1. The day you decided fear was boring. Let's not pretend fear is exciting anymore. At this point in your life, if you're over 60, if you've paid your taxes, buried a few friends, and learned how to program the TV remote twice a year, fear isn't some thrilling monster under the bed. No, it's more like a clingy ex that shows up uninvited to your mental dinner party and won't stop talking about what could go wrong. Let me ask you something you probably haven't heard from a self-help video before. What if fear wasn't destroying your life? It was just making it unbearably predictable. You know the drill. You want to try something new. Start painting again, join that Tai Chi group in the park, speak honestly to your adult kids, and here comes fear. Wearing yesterday's pajamas and smelling like regret. Don't do that, it whispers. It's dangerous. You'll embarrass yourself. What if nobody likes it? What if you fail? Fear's playlist is stuck on repeat, and honestly, it's getting a little dusty. So let's say it plainly, fear is boring. It's not some noble gatekeeper to keep you safe. It's an outdated program in your nervous system running on Windows 97. And here you are, a whole human being with wisdom, scars, love, loss, and kitchen cabinets full of vitamins, still letting a voice from your lizard brain call the shots? Come on. Fear doesn't care how spiritual you are. It doesn't care if you've done therapy, read Pema Chodron, or tried ayahuasca in Costa Rica with a shaman named Greg. It shows up anyway, with bad breath and a megaphone. But here's the twist. Fear isn't the villain in your life. It's just loud. And what's worse, you've been a very polite host. You haven't told it to leave. You've rearranged your furniture to accommodate it. You've delayed the trip, avoided the conversation, skipped the dance class. You've let fear decorate your life in shades of beige and call it wisdom. But there comes a moment, maybe today, where something inside of you finally stands up and says, I'm not afraid anymore. I'm just tired of being afraid. And that, my dear soul, is where things get interesting. That's the day you stop waiting to be fearless and start getting curious about what's on the other side of obedience. That's the day you realize fear is a suggestion, not a command. I once met a 78-year-old man named Charlie who hadn't dated anyone in 23 years. Too risky, he said. What if they die on me? I said, Charlie, what if you die on them? Isn't that the point? That we all die together, but with laughter lines instead of what-if wrinkles. He laughed. Then he cried. Then he joined a local choir, dated a woman named Pearl, and forgot what fear sounded like for 6 whole months. Fear didn't disappear. It just stopped being interesting. So here's the invitation for you. Don't wait for fear to die. Just stop feeding it 3 meals a day. You don't have to slay it like a dragon. Just stop giving it your best chair, your warmest blanket, and your undivided attention. Let fear knock. Let it scream. Let it sob dramatically at the foot of your bed, and then go outside anyway, paint anyway, speak anyway, love anyway, breathe anyway. Because fear will follow you as long as you keep looking back to check if it's still there. Today, we begin the process of turning away, gently, firmly, and maybe even with a little smile. Not because we're fearless, but because we're finally beautifully bored of being afraid. Part 2. Fear doesn't protect you. it just keeps you from living. 700 words, reflective, humorous, Buddhist-toned truth-telling. Let's get something straight. Fear didn't save you from lions. Fear saved you from having to explain yourself at dinner parties. That's right. Most of us aren't running from tigers anymore. We're running from awkward silences, rejection emails, honest conversations, and that terrifying moment when you say, "I love you," and they blink like you just spoke in Morse code. In ancient times, fear told you, "Hey, that snake, it bites." Now it says, "Hey, that vulnerability, it might get you ghosted." Same alarm system, very different jungle. You see, fear didn't evolve, you did. But nobody sent fear the memo. Fear is still operating under the assumption that your survival depends on never being emotionally exposed, financially embarrassed, or spiritually inconvenienced. And as a result, you've confused protection with paralysis. Here's the truth nobody wants to admit. Fear is a terrible protector, but an excellent prison warden. It doesn't build bridges, it builds routines, safe ones, quiet ones, beige ones. It tells you to stay in your lane, even though your soul wants to merge into oncoming traffic with the top down and your favorite Aretha Franklin song playing. Fear says, don't apply, you might be rejected. Don't speak up, you might offend. Don't try again, you might fail again. And suddenly, you're not living. You're managing your existence like it's a fragile family heirloom you're too scared to take out of the box. Here's a Buddhist twist for you. Fear is not an enemy. It's a misunderstanding. It's your ego mistaking discomfort for danger. It's your inner child saying, this feels different, let's not. And your inner adult saying, okay, we'll just stay home. But listen carefully, because this is the pivot. The brain cannot tell the difference between actual threat and unfamiliarity. That means your nervous system reacts to sending a bold email the same way it would if a tiger jumped through your window. Same adrenaline, same sweat, same desire to hide behind a ficus plant and cry. So if you're over 60 and you find yourself hesitating, not because you're incapable, but because you've told yourself, I don't know how to do this, guess what? That's fear, not fact. I once worked with an 82-year-old woman named Ellen who wanted to start a YouTube channel for her painting. She had one fear, the comment section. They'll mock me, she said, say I'm too old. I asked her, and what happens if they do? She thought about it. Well, I suppose I'd block them and keep painting. Boom. Fear? Irrelevant. Fear wasn't protecting her. It was stalling her creativity until death felt more comfortable than exposure. That's what fear does. It tries to bargain with time. It says, wait until you're ready. But it never defines what ready means. And so you wait, and the readiness never comes. Here's the Buddhist reminder. You are already enough. But your fear has amnesia. It forgets what you've survived. It forgets your resilience. It forgets that you've already lived through heartbreak, failure, change, funerals, pandemics, and at least one colonoscopy. You are not fragile. You're just overtrained in caution. So let's change the story. When fear shows up and whispers, this might go wrong, you smile and say yes, but what if it goes right? When fear says stay safe, you say I've been safe. I'd like to be awake now. And when fear tries to shield you from pain, you say, pain is a teacher. I've met it before. I'll make it tea if it knocks again. Fear's job was never to lead. That's your job now. And if you're afraid of looking foolish for stepping forward, just remember, it's a spiritual act to be seen fumbling your way into joy. Part 3. Fear is not a signal to stop. It's a sign you're waking up. Let's clear up one of fear's favorite lies. If you feel afraid, it means stop. No, dear one. It means pay attention. It means you're at the edge. It means something real, possibly holy, is trying to get your attention. But your first instinct, of course, is to run. That's okay. That's biological. Your nervous system is doing what it was trained to do. Scream danger whenever the unknown knocks. But here's the Ramdas twist. What if fear isn't a red light, but a sacred bell? What if every tremble in your hands was actually your soul stretching its arms after decades of sleeping under the warm, cozy blanket of predictability? I once met a retired therapist named Roy, 69 years old. Calm voice, button-up shirts, and a fear of singing in public so strong, he once passed out at karaoke night during the instrumental intro. One day, someone asked him, what's the worst that could happen if you sing badly? Roy paused, then he laughed. I guess, nothing. The next week, he signed up for singing lessons. At his first recital, he didn't hit the notes, but he did hit something deeper: the memory of joy. You see, fear is often a sign you're about to return to something you forgot mattered. And that feeling, that jolt in your chest, it's not danger, it's awakening. Fear often feels the strongest right before your real life begins. Let's say that again, slowly. Fear often feels the strongest right before your real life begins, because your old identity, the careful, quiet, agreeable version of you, senses that change is coming, and it's freaking out like a toddler in a thunderstorm. Don't shame it, just don't give it the steering wheel. Here's a little Buddhist moment for you. In Zen, we say, beginner's mind is the greatest place to be because it's empty, open, and alive. But beginner's mind often feels like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I might look ridiculous. What if I mess up? Which, let's be honest, is the same soundtrack fear uses to stop you from living. But now you know the trick. That feeling isn't a warning, it's a signal. It's like the first deep breath after winter, when the trees haven't budded yet, but they're about to. The trembling isn't weakness, it's aliveness. I want to propose something radical. Next time you feel fear, instead of pausing, analyzing, or catastrophizing, bow, smile, and step forward anyway. That's not denial, that's devotion. It's trusting the inner compass more than the outer chaos. Yes, your hands might shake, your voice might crack. Your neighbors might raise an eyebrow when you show up to pottery class in a hat that says, I survived myself. But that's the point. When fear rises, it means life is asking you a question. Are you ready to become who you've always been? So feel the fear. Don't push it away. Invite it in like an old friend who overstayed their welcome but still brought cookies. Then calmly step around them and do the thing anyway. Fear doesn't mean stop. It means something sacred is near. And if you're willing to walk into that sacred discomfort, something wild and beautiful just might bloom. Maybe even in you. Part 4. The Illusion Factory: How Fear Manufactures Fake Realities. Let me introduce you to the greatest special effects artist of all time. It's not James Cameron. It's not even your cousin Linda with her Instagram filters and false eyelashes. It's your fear. Fear doesn't deal in facts. It's in the imagination business. It's your brain's late-night screenwriter cooking up worst-case scenarios with the same budget as a Marvel film and the same subtlety as a telenovela. And the saddest part? You believe it. Every single time. Let's say you want to have a tough conversation with your adult daughter. You imagine her rolling her eyes, walking out, never calling again, posting a vague quote about toxic parents on Facebook, and joining a cult in Sedona. Or maybe you think about joining a poetry group, and your mind instantly shows you standing alone in a corner, forgotten, while everyone else quotes Rumi and you mispronounce haiku. That, my friend, is fear's gift. Illusion. In Buddhist terms, we call this Maya, the illusion of reality. But fear doesn't just suggest illusions, it produces them with Dolby surround sound and traumatic flashbacks. Here's how it works. 1. A moment of uncertainty arises. Your body tenses, you pause. 2. Fear whispers a story. They'll laugh at you, you'll mess it up, they'll leave, you're too old. Fear loves that one. 3. You play the story in your head like a rerun of a bad soap opera. Over and over. Until 4. Your body believes it's real. Heart races, muscles clench, your nervous system sends a memo, we are in danger. But here's the truth. You weren't in danger. You were in your mind. The danger was fictional. You just didn't label it as drama. You labeled it as truth. And so you said nothing, did nothing, remained stuck. Again. I once spoke with a man in his 70s who never learned to swim. When I asked why, he said, I had a dream once that I drowned. A dream. One bad inner film, and a lifetime of avoiding pools. He told himself that dream was a sign. I told him it was a movie. You were just the star and the audience. Here's what Buddhism teaches us. The mind is a powerful servant, but a terrible master. If you don't know you're watching a story, you'll spend your life reacting to fiction like it's news. Let's try this together. The next time fear offers you a screenplay, ask, is this real or is it rehearsed? Is this truth or trauma and drag? Is this happening now or just old pain with better lighting? And then, don't respond, don't argue, don't analyze. Just watch. That's meditation, not sitting cross-legged in a field of lavender, though you're welcome to. Meditation is the act of watching the mind build illusions and deciding not to build with it. You stop playing your role. You let the story fall apart. You disobey the script. It's deliciously rebellious. And fear? It hates being ignored. It thrives on attention, on drama, on endless rehearsals. But if you let it monologue and just sit quietly like a curious old monk on a bench, eventually it runs out of lines. Because fear is loud, but it's not deep. So here's your mantra for this part of the journey. Fear isn't truth. It's a screenplay. And I've decided to walk out of the theater before the popcorn gets cold. Part 5. Kill fear with ritual, not rage. Let's get something clear before you light another incense stick and try to manifest courage into your morning coffee. Fear doesn't respond to rage, or reason, or inspirational quotes in cursive font. Fear is like a stubborn houseguest that doesn't leave just because you yell at it. If anything, that just makes it dig in deeper and ask where the snacks are. So here's what actually works. Ritual, repetition, rhythm. You don't destroy fear by hyping yourself up. You wear it down like an old pair of shoes. You outlast it. You bore it into submission with your steady, almost unreasonable commitment to showing up, again and again and again. Because here's the overlooked truth. You don't become fearless through willpower. You become fearless through habit. Let me tell you about Carol. Carol is 74. She's a widow. She wakes up every morning at 6:15 sharp, puts on a kettle and reads one page from a battered book of Zen koans. Then she goes outside and walks barefoot on the grass. Rain or shine, doesn't matter. I asked her once, what's the point of all that? She said, so I remember I'm still wild, even if my knees aren't. That, my friend, is the kind of ritual that rewires fear. It's not glamorous, it's not viral content, but it works. Let's build yours. Build your. Ritual 1. The cold shower of consciousness. Not literally, unless you're into that. I mean doing one thing each day that makes your stomach tighten. Saying no when you usually say yes. Asking a question when you'd usually pretend to know. Wearing the bold outfit. Clicking publish before your fear edits it to death. Each act is a small spiritual protest against the empire of fear. Ritual 2. Make your bed like it's a Buddhist offering. No, really. Make your damn bed. Not to impress your therapist, but because it's your first declaration of order in a chaotic mind. It says, today, I am not waiting to feel brave. I am beginning with discipline. Fear hates discipline. It prefers indecision. It thrives in piles of unfolded laundry and half-written emails. So fold your corners, hit send, stack your tiny wins. Ritual 3. Sacred movement walk. Stretch. Dance in a way that would make your grandkids cringe. Fear grows in stillness. It marinates in stagnation. But it dies a quiet death in the bloodstream of motion. A body in motion says to fear, you can scream, but I've got things to do. Ritual 4. The daily disruption. Pick one small sacred rule and break it with intention. Sit in a different chair. Eat with your non-dominant hand. Call someone you haven't spoken to since the Nixon administration. Why? Because fear loves routines that keep you small. But ritual, real ritual, teaches your nervous system to stop worshiping predictability. Ritual 5. Speak power before fear can whisper. Affirmations aren't fluff, they're verbal armor. Say it out loud, even if your voice trembles. I do hard things. Fear is not my compass. I walk with my ancestors at my back and breakfast in my belly. Whatever works, just say it before fear gets the mic. You see, fear thrives in silence, in hesitations, in half steps. But rituals, they create momentum. And momentum is spiritual caffeine. So if fear shows up again tomorrow, let it. Just greet it like an old neighbor you've learned to live beside. Smile, nod, and then go sweep your porch anyway. Because fear isn't slayed in a single battle. It's worn down through 1,000 sacred, silly, disciplined repetitions. One quiet act at a time. Part 6. The deathbed test. Fear versus legacy. Let's take a detour. Not into motivation, but into mortality. I know. Not exactly YouTube friendly, but stay with me. Because if you want to kill fear, you need to understand what it's actually stealing. It's not just stealing your courage. It's not just stealing your dreams. It's stealing your legacy, one hesitant day at a time. Imagine this. You're lying on your deathbed, maybe in a hospital, maybe in your own home. Hopefully not at a Denny's. But hey, life's unpredictable. You're surrounded by silence and soft breathing. But you're not alone. Oh no. Around you stand the ghosts of every version of yourself that never got to live. The artist you silenced, the lover you didn't pursue, the bold truth-teller who kept swallowing their voice like pills. They all stare at you. Some look sad, some look annoyed. One smoking a cigarette and muttering, "Seriously, you were afraid of what?" And they ask you, quietly but clearly, why did you let fear decide? It's not meant to be cruel. It's a question wrapped in mercy. Because at the very end, when your breath thins and your calendar clears forever, there's only one real thing left: what you did in spite of fear. Everything else? Gone. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. Most of us choose fear without realizing it. We call it being practical, staying safe, waiting for the right time. But really, it's just polite paralysis. We avoid the risk. We delay the dream. We don't say what needs saying. Not because we're cowards, but because we're conditioned. Conditioned to believe the biggest sin is messing up, when the real tragedy is never showing up. Now here's the Buddhist curveball. Death is not the enemy, the unlived life is. Death is just a doorway. But fear is a slow erosion. It eats you while you're still breathing. And elders know this. Because you've seen it, haven't you? The friend who spent 20 years saying, "One day I'll go to Italy." The cousin who stayed in a marriage like it was a sentence. The woman who said, "I'll tell them how I feel," and never did. And now, they're gone. And all that remains is the echo of what could have been. So let's not pretend this is just about feeling better. This is about not leaving this earth with your song still stuck in your throat. This is about legacy. Because nobody, and I mean nobody, remembers the man who always played it safe. There are no statues for the woman who never risked vulnerability. The world is moved by those who were afraid and still moved anyway. So let me ask you now, while you're still here, still able to wobble your way into wonder, what would your obituary say if fear wrote it? Now rewrite it. Let your future self, the one unburdened by fear, take the pen back. Let them scribble wildly across the page. She danced with trembling knees. He said it before he felt ready. They loved like they weren't waiting for permission. Because legacy isn't built in comfort. Legacy is built in holy defiance. And if the price of your courage is a little embarrassment, a little risk, a little heartbreak, so be it. You won't remember the fear, but you'll remember the day you looked it in the eye and whispered, "Not today. Not at the end of my story." Part 7. Fear is your oldest addiction, and you're due for detox. Let's drop a truth bomb, shall we? Fear isn't just an emotion, it's a habit. Actually, scratch that. Fear is an addiction. Not the sexy kind people write memoirs about. Not the kind with intervention shows or rehab centers in Malibu. No, this one's sneakier, older, more socially acceptable. We're all just fear junkies, nodding off on our daily dose of dread, chasing the familiar high of not doing the thing. Think about it. Fear gives you something to talk about at dinner. "Oh, I could never do that. I'm just too old for that now. What if I fail?" Cue sympathetic nods, a refill of lukewarm tea, and everyone moves on. And just like that, you get your hit. Because fear offers a cheap substitute for depth. Instead of being brave, you get to feel self-protective. Instead of action, you get analysis. Instead of peace, you get control. And like any addiction, it feels safe, comforting, familiar. It gives you identity. You're the cautious one, the realist, the humble one. But here's the spiritual sucker punch. Fear isn't humility. It's ego in sheep's clothing. It's your ego saying, "If I never try, I never fail. If I never speak, I'm never judged. If I never leave the shore, I can't drown." But guess what? You're still drowning, just not in water, in regret. Let me tell you about Marlene. Marlene was 81 when she realized she hadn't done a single new thing in 14 years. She wasn't sad, she was numb. Fear had become her lifestyle. Comfort had become her cage. And one day, she looked at her dog, named Carl, and said, "If I don't change something soon, we're both gonna die of routine." So she tried something radical, a fear detox. No, not skydiving or firewalking or throwing her phone into the sea, though honestly tempting. She just made a rule. For 30 days, whatever fear told her not to do, she did it. Fear said, "Don't compliment that stranger." She did. Fear said, "Don't dance at the park." She did. Poorly. Fear said, "Don't post that poem you wrote in the 90s. She posted it. It went viral in a Facebook group for former librarians. And slowly, the addiction broke. Because here's the Buddhist medicine. Fear is not something you need to conquer. It's something you need to unlearn. Every fearful reaction is a neural pathway carved by repetition. Just like an addiction. And like any addiction, the cure isn't force, it's presence. It's sitting with the urge to shrink and doing nothing. It's watching fear's little panic parade go by while you sip tea and say, "Ah, there you are again. How dramatic." Here's your detox protocol. 1. Notice the craving. Fear will whisper, "You can't." Pause, smile, say, "Nice try." 2. Do the opposite, even in a small way. Fear says, "Don't call them," send a text. Fear says, "Don't post it," hit send. Fear says, "Don't wear that color," wear it twice. 3. Track the lie. Every time fear tries to protect you, write down what it predicted and then what actually happened. Most of the time, nothing happened. You lived, you were fine. Sometimes you even had fun. Gasp. 4. Celebrate discomfort. Not in a weird masochistic way, but mark it. "Oh, look at that. I was scared and did it anyway. Someone give me a cookie." Because here's the final truth. Fear wants to feel important, but your curiosity is stronger. Curiosity is what toddlers used to become people. It's what monks use to sit still. It's what makes old souls young again. And that, my friend, is the real high. Part 8. What if you're not afraid? Just bored of being yourself? Let's try something uncomfortable. What if you're not actually afraid? You're just exhausted from playing the same character your whole life. Stay with me. What if fear isn't the obstacle? What if it's just the excuse? The polite mask you wear to cover up the fact that you're a little bored? Not with life. With you. Oof. Too real? Let me explain. We all develop a role. A me we play in public. The strong one. The wise one. The caretaker. The humble sufferer. The one who always jokes when it gets serious. The one who never asks for help. And after decades of playing that part, you might wake up one morning, look in the mirror, and think, "I don't even know who I am anymore, but I'm tired of this actor." Here's where fear steps in like a terrible life coach and says, "Oh no, you can't change now. What will people think? If you become someone new, who will love you? You're too old to rewrite your story." And so you stay in character, saying the same lines, wearing the same emotional wardrobe, recycling the same responses, because at least it's familiar. But you're not scared. You're restless. You're spiritually claustrophobic. And the remedy isn't courage. It's permission. Permission to get weird. Permission to surprise yourself. Permission to finally stop performing and start becoming. I once met a man named George, 76, former military. Always ironed his pants, spoke in sentences with zero contractions. One day he confessed in a meditation circle, "I'm tired of being respectable. I think I want to paint my toenails teal." We all paused. Then someone passed him a bottle of nail polish. He painted one toe. The next week, 2. A month later, he showed up in sandals and said, "I've never felt more like myself." George wasn't afraid. He was bored of his own emotional uniform. And the moment he dropped the act, he became radiant. That's what fear is often protecting, not your safety, your consistency. But growth is not consistent. It's messy, confusing, hilarious. It's a senior citizen in teal toe polish finally breathing without apology. In Buddhist terms, this is called beginner's mind, not childishness, but the courage to meet life with fresh eyes. Here's your assignment. No spiritual bypassing allowed. 1. Do one thing this week that would surprise even you. Go on. Weird yourself out. Buy the weird hat. Write the angry letter, then burn it. Join the improv class. Eat breakfast for dinner and say, "I live outside time." 2. Ask this sacred question. Who would I be if I forgot who I've been? Let it sit in your chest like warm soup. Maybe you'd laugh louder, cry sooner, love sloppier. Maybe you'd stop trying to be deep and just be real. 3. Notice where you're over-identified with being good. Good parent, good partner, good patient. All great roles, but not if they're suffocating your aliveness. You're not on earth to be good. You're here to be whole. And wholeness, that includes contradiction, eccentricity, even rebellion, especially after 60, if not now, when? So maybe fear isn't keeping you small. Maybe it's just trying to keep your act together. While your soul is backstage with glitter screaming, "Let's make a scene." Let it. You've earned it. Part 9. The final step. Befriend fear like a Buddhist. Befriends a mosquito. Let's talk about the one strategy no one ever recommends when it comes to fear. Not fighting it, not overcoming it, not even transforming it. But this, making friends with it. Yes, friends, like you would with a particularly dramatic aunt who always thinks the world is ending, or a neighbor who won't stop texting you articles about sinkholes. Let's rewind. There's an old Zen story of a monk meditating in a small hut. He's calm, composed, nearing enlightenment, until a mosquito buzzes into the room. The monk tries to ignore it. Breathe through it. Be one with the buzzing. But after 3 hours of zzz and one near-death swat to his own forehead, he snaps, throws his cushion, shouts at the mosquito like it owes him rent. And just then, he has his breakthrough. Not because the mosquito left, but because he stopped pretending he was too spiritual to be annoyed. That's how fear works. It's not always a lion in the bushes. Sometimes it's just a mental mosquito, annoying, persistent, harmless, unless you start flailing. And here's the Buddhist trick. What you resist persists, but what you welcome softens. So instead of screaming, "I must destroy fear," try this. Invite it in for tea. No, really. Next time fear shows up, before a conversation, a trip, a choice, a post, just say, "Oh hey fear, you're early today. Would you like chai or peppermint?" Sit with it, watch it. Ask it questions like, "What story are you telling me right now? Whose voice do you sound like? Mom's? Society's? A coach from 1952? Is this fear about now or about 40 years ago, dressed up in modern anxiety?" The point isn't to get rid of it, it's to stop letting it drive the car while you're pretending it's not even there. Because the truth is this, fear never leaves completely, but it does get bored when you stop reacting like it's your boss. I once met a woman named Joan. She was 89, a retired nurse, and more enlightened than any monk I'd ever met. She told me, "I still get afraid sometimes, but now I treat fear like an old cat. It hisses, it claws, it sheds everywhere, but I just pat its head and say, 'Okay, I see you, now move.'" That's not weakness, that's mastery. To be able to feel the fear, name it, and still walk forward, with humor, with grace, maybe with trembling hands, but forward nonetheless. That's what we're after. Not fearlessness. Familiarity. When you get to know fear like a roommate with bad hygiene but decent taste in music, it stops being your captor and starts being just another part of the symphony. Buddhist teacher Pema Chodron says, "To be fully alive, fully human, and completely awake is to be continually thrown out of the nest." And guess who keeps kicking you out? Fear. It's not your punishment, it's your push. So let it be there, let it buzz, let it bite. Offer it tea and a front row seat, then go on stage anyway. Because sometimes the most radical spiritual act isn't silencing fear. It's turning to it mid-buzz and saying, "You can come with me, but I'm the one holding the mic." Conclusion. Well, look at you. You made it all the way through 10 parts of fear, foolishness, and freedom. And what did we learn, dear soul? That fear isn't some fire-breathing demon. It's a bored actor in a cheap costume. Loud, dramatic, but absolutely beatable. We learned fear thrives in stillness, but shrinks when you move. That your deathbed deserves a legacy, not an excuse. And maybe, just maybe, you're not scared. You're just ready for something new. If that hit home, or made you laugh, or made you mutter, "Damn," go ahead and hit that like button. Not for me, but for every older soul out there still learning how to walk barefoot through their fear. Comment below and tell us, which version of you are you ready to set free? And if you haven't yet, subscribe to join our Sangha of late-blooming Buddhists and emotionally liberated elders. We're walking each other home, one honest video at a time. Let's hit 1,000 subscribers, not for clout, but because wisdom deserves a louder microphone. Until next time, breathe, bow to your fear, then go do the thing anyway. Welcome to Buddhist Wisdom for the Elderly, your soul's weird little refuge on YouTube. Namaste, and pass the cookies.